My name's Jeff. I'm an alcoholic, and I've been through the process with the help of a Big Book Step Study meeting. Big Book Step Study sponsor this meeting, because that's where I came to. You folks, because that's where I was. And I've made all my amends, and I practiced the ladder steps, 10 through 12, to the best of my willingness. And Jackie, thank you for letting me share. I appreciate it. And actually, the candy I gave her was a bribe trying to weasel out of it, but it didn't work. So today we're on step 3, and I guess I have to be honest because that's part of what the fellowship is all about. I had my last drink in January of 1980, and I really didn't get the third step completely until I came to Big Book Step Study in 2015, which makes me a member of the Late Bloomers Club, and I'm a good member and standing of that, of whom Jack is the president, self-appointed and anointed. And so I did have an earthly higher power. I turned my drink problem over. There was no problem with that. I could identify with everything else. And I would get up in the morning, get down on my knees and ask a power to keep me away from a drink. And at night I get down on my knees and thank him. And I had an earthly higher power, and that was my wife. And I kind of turned my will and my life over to her, and it was working okay. And but then in 2014, she wasn't feeling well in June, and we went to the hospital together in an ambulance, and I stayed with her, you know, in the emergency room and in the hospital night and day. And she passed away in August of 2014. So all of a sudden, my earthly higher power was gone, and I was lost. And so I got back into AA on an active basis, and lo and behold, through the grace of God, grace is an unmerited gift. I didn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. I got to this meeting, the Big Book Step Study. And that's where I got a sponsor. And the sponsor started to take me through the steps. Now, steps I had to look at and figure out what they were, right? And the step is a noun, and it's an action plan to take and to achieve a desired result. And that's what I was taking. It wasn't that I was drinking, it's just that I was completely lost as far as everything was concerned. And so when I started, I went through the steps with him, and every time we got together, we would hold hands, which was a little different, you know. Two guys hold hands, and we'd say the third step prayer. And we started out at McDonald's, that's where we met, and then as we got to know each other, we wound up at his house, and then at my house, because that's where, you know, there was nobody else there but me, and so it was a lot easier. And we went through the first 2 steps, and I had no problem with the doctor's opinion, meaning that I was powerless over alcohol. I had the physical allergy, there was no doubt about that. And that my life was unmanageable. Yeah, I could identify with Fred, the accountant, and Jim, the car salesman, who, you know, they picked up a drink for an insane reason. Particularly, I think about Fred, the accountant, who had a successful business in Washington, and then he walked into the dining room and said, well, I think I'll have a cocktail, and I could identify with that. And then we get into believing in a power greater than ourselves. Now, I'm from New England. I was born in Massachusetts, and in Massachusetts I was raised self-reliance, Emerson and Thoreau. That's how I was brought up. I went to Sunday school. God was over here, you know, Jeff was here, and he had to get the job done. And but in the agnostics, I came to understand that God is actually inside Jeff. And so that's where he is today. And when I pray, it's to release him to do his will, and to live, turn my life over to him. I couldn't do that before because I hadn't really taken that step the way it should be done. And there is a solution, you know, could restore me to sanity, the second part of step 2. And, you know, I think about what Dr. Young said in that step, and that is that, you know, we have to have a complete spiritual change. Our personality has to change. And that's where I began to realize that I really have to change entirely. And so when I started to talk about in this step, you know, how I was selfish, self-centered, and wow, I mean, that was something I really had to look at. Because when I came back from overseas in the service, it was kind of like Bill, I thought, well, I was a material boy, material things were going to make me happy. And that's what I thought. And they never did. What made me happy was my family, my kids, that's what really made me happy, getting out of myself. But it wasn't until I got into the third step on the Big Book Step Study that I really had to look at my selfishness and self-centeredness. And that was really the root of my problems. It was the key to what was wrong with me. And I had to let go of it. Now, I don't let go of it in the third step. I make a decision to turn my life and my will over to God as we understand Him. And that's the other thing about these steps. It ain't Jeff that's doing it. It's we that's doing it. Because if Jeff, what you said to me, Jeff, you're powerless over alcohol, my ego would come right up and say, hey, wait a minute here, right? But today, when it is we, then I do it as part of the group. And I did it with part of the group here at the Big Book Step Study. I do it as part of the group in AA. And it's a fellowship. And together we do it, and that's how it works. And so it works if you work it, and that's what we have to do. So I took this step, and when I got ready to take it, we read the book, did everything else, and then we got together, and we went to a church, and he lit a candle. And we didn't actually had a candle that he screwed up. It was a battery one. And we sat down. We got up in the altar on our knees, and I took the step with him. And was it something that at that point in time that I had started to turn my will over, and I had started to turn my life over. The will, of course, is my thoughts. The life is my actions. And to God, as I understood Him, and I interpret that as my higher power, as I understand my higher power. And as I said, today I know that higher power is within me. It's not out there doing everything out here, and I'm trying to do something over here. The more I turn it over, the more I have self-forgetfulness, the better off I am. And it's this selfishness and self-centeredness is never going to leave me. It's like the disease of alcoholism. That's the root cause as you get into it. And I'm going to die with it, or I'm going to die from it. And if I don't treat it a day at a time, then it's going to come back and it's going to bushwhack me. And it's not only going to bushwhack me, it's going to hurt my family, who I love and I want to see have the best happen to them. And today, because I take the steps and I work the steps, I can be a father, I can be a grandfather, I can live a normal life, like Fred talked about on page 42, when he said, not only had he not been drinking, but he had been catapulted into a way of living which was much better than the way he had before. Now, am I going to get that when I take the third step? No, because the third step is a decision. It's choosing between two courses of action. For me to keep running the show myself, or to turn it over to my higher power, whom I call God. And if I make that decision to turn it over, then I have to then take the next steps, which are going to be 4 through 9. This is an action step, they say. The first 2 steps are contemplative steps. They were acceptance steps, really, that I'm an alcoholic and my life is unmanageable. And I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, only because I saw it happening in other people and I was following the suggestions, just as I do today. So there's an old saying in AA, if you want what we have, do what we do. If you want some more, there's the door. Thank you.